last tutorial, we started to look at manner of articulation, the type and degree of obstruction of the airflow when consonants are made. We've already looked at the oral stops and the nasal stops. In this tutorial, we will look at the manner of articulation of some more types of consonants. With all the sounds that we've discussed so far, the stops, there's a brief, complete obstruction of the airflow. If we bring one articulator very close to another, the airflow can pass between the two articulators, but has to go through a very narrow passage, creating a kind of noise. The sounds made in this way are fricatives. Usually with fricatives, the velum is raised so that air can't escape out of the nose, though it's continually passing through the narrow passage out of the mouth. English doesn't have bilabial fricatives, though some languages, including Spanish, do. English has labiodental fricatives, where the lower lip comes close to or touches the upper front teeth. The voiceless and voiced labiodental fricatives are the initial sounds in fine and vine, the symbols for them being F and V respectively. There are two sounds in English written as TH, as in thing and this. These are voiceless and voiced dental fricatives respectively. The IPA symbols for these are the Greek letter theta on the left for the th sound and the Latin letter F for the V sound. English also has voiced and voiceless alveolar fricatives, as in the words sue and zoo. Here we bring the tip or the blade of the tongue very close to the alveolar ridge, and the symbols for these are the letters S and Z. There are also palato-alveolar fricatives in English. So remember that palato-alveolar sounds involve the blade of the tongue and the back of the alveolar ridge or the area just behind the alveolar ridge. The sh sound of ship is a voiceless palato-alveolar fricative, and the symbol for it is a long stretched out S. We also have a voiced palato-alveolar fricative in English, but it's rare. It's the sound in the middle of pleasure and at the end of rouge. The symbol for it resembles the number 3, but with a flat top, and part of it goes below the line of writing. Finally, there's a voiceless glottal fricative, as in the word hat, and its symbol is a H. Some other languages have fricatives in other places of articulation. For example, German has a voiceless velar fricative, as in the word buch. It also occurs in Scottish English in the well-known word loch, as in the Loch Ness monster, and the symbol for this is an X. German also has a voiceless palatal fricative, also spelled with CH in German, as in the word ich, meaning I. The symbol for this is a C with a cedilla. Now, remember what we said about stops, that they involve a brief, complete blockage of the airflow, and then one articulator moves away from the other and the compressed air behind the blockage rushes out. The air rushes out because the articulator moves away quickly. If the articulator moves away slowly, the formerly blocked air can still escape, but only through a narrow passage, since the articulator has not yet moved far enough away for the airflow to be completely free. The sound created when there's a complete blockage followed by a gradual release is called an affricate. The symbols for affricates are made up of a symbol for a stop followed by the symbol for a fricative, which is appropriate since affricates could be seen as a sequence of a stop followed by a fricative. There are only two affricates in English, a voiceless palato-alveolar affricate, so the word church both begins and ends with this sound, and the symbol for it looks like this one on the left. We also have a voiced palato-alveolar affricate. So for example, the name George begins and ends with this sound, and the symbol for it is like this one here on the right. Other affricates can be found in some other languages. For example, Russian and Japanese both have a voiceless alveolar affricate, as in the words tsar and tsunami. We can put our tongue against various places on the upper surface of the mouth and completely block the flow of air, creating a stop. If we lower one or both sides of the tongue while doing this, the air will be able to flow out around the sides of the tongue, although it's blocked from going out the centre of the mouth by the tongue being against some other articulator. This is the lateral manner of articulation. Like nasals, laterals are mostly voiced, although voiceless ones are possible. There's one lateral in English, a voiced alveolar lateral, with which the tip or blade of the tongue touches the alveolar ridge, but with one or both sides of it lowered. So this is the sound at the beginning of the word lie, and the symbol for it is just the letter L. Approximant is another manner of articulation in which two articulators are close together, but not as close as for a fricative, so there's no fricative noise. Approximants are generally voiced, but voiceless ones are possible. English has two kinds of approximants, rhotics and glides. Different languages and dialects have different R-type sounds, representing several manners of articulation. Together, these are called rhotics. The R sound of Australian English, as in the word red, is made by bringing the tip or blade of the tongue fairly close to the alveolar ridge, but not so close as to create a noisy airflow. We call this sound a voiced alveolar approximant. The symbol for this is an upside down backwards letter R. Another R-type sound that occurs in the speech of some speakers of English is a tap. So tap is a manner of articulation. When some speakers say the words latter and ladder, there's not a T sound or a D sound in the middle of the words. It sounds more like ladder. They're actually saying another sound which involves the tongue quickly moving up from its rest position to strike the alveolar ridge and coming down again. It's sort of like a flicking motion. The symbol for it is this one here. It's voiced, so we call it a voiced alveolar tap. Some speakers of English and some other languages have yet another R-type sound, a trill. With this manner of articulation, one articulator is held loosely near another so that the flow of air between them sets them in motion, alternately sucking them together and blowing them apart. Trills are distinctive sounds. Spanish has an alveolar trill, and this is what the IPA symbol R stands for. It is also found in some dialects of English, like Scottish English. So it's when you're rolling your R, like that. Okay, so we mentioned glides before and said that they sound like vowels but are used like consonants. If you look at the IPA chart, you'll see that glides are classified as approximants, just like the rhotics are. The sound which begins the word yes involves bringing the front of the tongue, the part behind the tip and blade of the tongue, towards the palate. Not touching the palate, for then we'd have a stop, nor even close enough to cause a noisy airflow, but just relatively close. This sound is a voiced palatal approximant, and the IPA symbol for it is the letter J. Now, sometimes an IPA symbol is not what we would expect it to be, as this one here, but the letter J is used to spell this sound in German. For example, JA spells ja for yes. There is an IPA symbol using the letter Y, but it stands for a vowel and not this glide sound. As well as and y, there's one more approximant in Australian English, a more complicated one, not that we have any trouble saying it. The back of the tongue is raised toward the velum, though not enough to block the airflow or to make it noisy. At the same time, the lips are rounded. All this creates the oo sound in English, as in we or water. Because it involves both the lips and the back of the tongue and the velum in the IPA chart, this sound is called labiovelar, or sometimes labial velar, and the symbol for it is a W.